I was angry. I was angry that my wife and I stumbled across Montessori. Our friend just happened to mention, hey, have you looked at the local Montessori school? As we were looking around for various types of schools for our kids who had just become 3 years old, 4 years old. We had them in a daycare, and we were kind of searching around. What's next? Is it homeschooling? Is it this? Is it that? Just knew nothing about Montessori. And our friend happened to mention it, and we went and took a look at it. We're blown away by what we saw. Ended up enrolling our children, and over the next couple of months, really fell in love with it. And the anger part comes in when I started talking with my family and friends and coworkers and neighbors, asking them, hey, have you heard about Montessori? Do you know what these schools are about? You know what they look like? Nobody knew what they were. I got everything from, what did you say, monastery? To is it for rich kids? Is it for special needs children? Is it for this? Is it for that? They had no clue. So I realized, wait a minute, this school that we have fallen in love with and that is really changing our family life even, and changing the way that we look at our kids, is something that needs to be more widely known. What can I do to help? And so what started out as you know what, maybe I could write a letter to the editor. You know, maybe I could, what could I do? Could I, come up with a list of what Montessori is and send it to my friends? Or what can I do to help spread the word amongst the people I know a little bit? Just thinking of baby steps at first, eventually snowballed into, well, why don't I write a whole essay? Or why don't I write a whole book that my family would read? And just by sticking to it and by doing a little bit each day for the next 6 months, it turned into a whole book, and realized, hey, why don't I just go ahead and publish this and get it out there? And it has really taken on a life of its own, and it's become my own little Montessori journey myself. Setting a goal of something that you find interesting and valuable and exciting, and sticking to it and figuring out how to reach that goal. And then when you reach that goal, find another thing that looks interesting and continue on from there. And this whole book, and now a speaking tour, I've been to I don't know, 25 states or so, and 4 countries, and I started all from that first seed of, what can I do to let my friends and family know about this type of school in case they want to choose it for themselves, or their kids, I mean. This is the first thing I've ever written. I mean, I had always wanted to write a book, but I'm a pilot. I mean, that's not, it wasn't, I had missed that boat, but I'd always had that desire in the back. I had just never found something that I was that interested in. And I wasn't, you think of writing a book, you want somebody who's very knowledgeable in that subject. But when I was first learning about Montessori and I was reading the books that were out there, Maria Montessori's books and some of these other books that are fantastic, but they're all written from the viewpoint of the expert. I'm the expert. Let me tell you everything about Montessori, and that's fine. But there was a huge gap there I saw, that there was no book there from the perspective of a newcomer, just coming into this and discovering what it was all about and saying, hey, look at this. This is interesting. Oh, well, look what they're doing over here. Can you believe what they're doing here? That kind of perspective that would appeal to an average Joe dad or an average mom that is not really into studying the different kinds of education, and it's just, they have children and now they're of school age, and what do we do? And they're just hanging on, changing diapers and doing this and doing that, and it's hard to take the time to research different schools and things. I mean, you're busy. You have kids screaming in the back of the car. So I was hoping to write a book that would appeal to those types of people who would just assume that they would put their children in the traditional public school system because that's where they went and they turned out okay. Those types of people. And so I wrote it in a very easy to read manner, and I bring in a lot of examples from my flying career, and drawing connections between what the children are learning in their classrooms and how that applies out in the real world, and how many of these careers out here, focusing mainly on aviation, are using a lot of the same principles that are found in the classrooms. So I thought that would really bring it home more with parents if they could kind of relate to what's going on in the classroom. Because when you sit in the class for the first time, it's wonderful and it's amazing, but it's totally different than anything you've ever experienced before. And so I thought if I could intrigue parents. Right about the time that we enrolled our children in a Montessori school, I also joined a Toastmasters club because I was a horrible public speaker. And so this has kind of progressed together, and I had no idea. When the book came out, started talking with schools and it started selling, and it's on Amazon and this and that. And one day, out of the blue, a director of a school called and said, hey, could you give a parent education night event or speech or presentation? Do you do those sorts of things? And I said, yes. And that was the first one that I realized, wait a minute, maybe I could provide some value in this way also, not just through selling the book, but also through speaking. And so a few months later, I lined up a couple of events, and it went really well. And then I took a leave of absence for an entire year from my flying career because the offers were coming in so hot and heavy. Yes, I'd like to accept them all, but I can't if I'm also working. So I took a whole year off and just spent the entire year traveling around and talking to various parent groups and conferences and that sort of thing. And it's been wonderful, and it's been shocking. Total career change. I mean, total from flying airplanes to talking about children's education. I never would have imagined that I'd be doing that.
But you're enjoying it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's great. It's great. It feels valuable. It feels like I'm doing valuable work in such a valuable field. And aviation is fun. It's fun to fly airplanes. I enjoy the physical aspects of it. Is it that valuable? It's not as valuable to me as educating the next generation that is going to take over the world, and they're going to be running the world within 10 or 20 years. Wow, how valuable is that? Really, really interesting. It's been interesting seeing the various schools and classrooms, and I try to observe classrooms whenever I can, all the different ages, from toddlers up to the adolescent programs, and there's a few high school programs around, because you always pick up something. Sitting in the classroom, you always pick up something that you have never seen before. One of the recent ones that stood out in my memory is sitting in a class and watching the children do their work and realizing that there was a chair over on one side of the room that was by a window, and the chair was turned to face out. And I had never noticed that in a classroom before. And as I travel around to other Montessori schools, now and then, sure enough, I see that where they have a chair or two set up, sometimes with a desk, facing out the window. Not as, when I was in school, that might have been a punishment or something if one was off in the corner. But it's so that children can sit down and do their work and just look outside, or just look outside. Imagine going to class and it being okay to go stand by the window and look outside. How wonderful is that? And it's something that really brings home to me how confident we are in the children and how respectful we are of the children, that sometimes you just need to look outside. You just need to look at that tree out there, those birds or the clouds. And I have confidence that even though I'm calling myself a school and I have all this pressure behind me that make sure this child learns his math facts and his spelling skills and all that, that when that child is done looking outside, he'll move on to something else, and he'll be relaxed and invigorated and inspired, and it's just wonderful how it all ties together, treating the children like humans instead of like widgets in a factory. It's 8 o'clock, come in, sit down, do this work, bell rings, move to this. Totally different view of that child.